So I get asked a lot in the comments of my videos, or if I run into people, or if I'm working with an artist and I'm mixing something, I get asked the question a lot, what third-party plugins do I need to buy or should I buy? This is a tough one to answer, but I wanted to do a video to just definitively come out and say my stance on where I stand with this question. And that is for basic things like, for example, like let's call it transparent, not even transparent, but let's call it EQ, compression, basic dynamics, things like saturation, things like reverbs, delays, and maybe wideners like choruses and things like that. The stock tools that are built into most DAWs these days are really great. And anybody who's worth a pinch of salt should be able to get a great result. And at the end of the day, if I mixed a song in Studio One using only stock plugins, and this could also include stuff that comes from Fat Channel, like emulations, but let's just bundle everything together and call it stock plugins. The end result of my mix, it should sound similar, or the tastes and the way that I mix would probably be the same thing, and it should still end up sounding like my mix. It's not like if I can't use the third-party plugins that I'm used to, or even the hardware that I'm used to, that it wouldn't sound like my mix. Okay, so does that mean I'm telling everybody you don't ever need to buy a really nice third-party, chorus plugin or reverb or delay that's really tasteful and models something? No, that doesn't mean that at all. It means that there's going to be kind of like a ratio of the amount of profit margin you have, the amount of money you have to invest into what you're doing, whether you're doing this full-time, whether you're doing it part-time, whether it's a hobby, and nobody knows the answer to that question but you. And this is something that you build slowly. You're not just going to go out and spend all your money in one shot and invest in a bunch of plugins. And you do it carefully. You catch a sale here, you catch a sale there, and stuff like that. But what I'm trying to answer is I'm trying to save people headache and trying to give some information that took me a really long time to figure out. And most of it's because I'm really freaking stubborn. But other than that, it's just, the interesting thing is, I feel like I'm progressing from the time from when I started to 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. Where I am, where my mixes are. The interesting thing is if I open up my sessions now, stuff that I'm doing now versus even 2018 or before that, I'm using a lot less plugins, and I feel that I have better mixes with a lot less plugins. And the interesting thing is, sometimes it's very basic things. I'm doing so much now with faders and really trying to zero in on my listening environment, make sure that I'm listening accurately. I've done a video already on how I'm a big fan of plugins like SonarWorks. That's the tool that I choose to use. But there's other room correction softwares out there, and there's other systems. Slate has one for headphones. Other companies have their own systems, okay? But one thing that I was, again, late to the party on was tools that help you optimize the phase between multi-mic'd sources and how absolutely beneficial they can be to getting a great sound. I'm going to open up my mixer for a second. I've got a session open that I just finished the mix on. Let me take a look at what's happening here. Okay, notice my drums. Let's have a listen to the drums. I'm going to solo these out. Okay. So here are the drum tracks. I don't have a lot of stuff that's happening on these drums. I don't have a case where it was regular for me before that I would open up something and I might have 3 or 4 plugins on each one of these tracks. One thing that I'm using on everything is I'm using a plugin that helps me optimize the phase between multiple sources. Now, this isn't a plug for this particular plugin. This is just me coming out and answering and saying, if I was given a choice, knowing what I know now, if I was given a choice and I was given X amount of dollars, let's say a budget of a couple $100 or something like that, and I had a choice, I could buy the fanciest best new reverb or an amazing sounding third-party plug-in emulation of a classic piece of gear or something like that right now. And I was mixing, for example, lots of stuff where I was working with actual drums that were multi-mic'd and they have phase relationships between them. My first thing before I turn to anything, any reverbs, any compressor, my first thing would actually be finding a plugin that allows me to optimize the phase between all of these different sources. I mean, let's take a listen to these drums. And if I take everything here, okay, that sounds to me like a pretty nice blend. Okay, we're listening to that together. Just a nice drum sound. Now I'm going to take out auto align altogether. Listen to what happens. There's not a level difference. It's not like I activated this plugin and it made everything 6 dB louder. It just optimized the phase relationships between everything, between all of these sources. And the way that you want to do that is up to you. There's different people who do this in different ways. But if you've ever had a situation where you felt that you were like fighting something, where you couldn't get the low end to sound right on a kick drum or on a drum kit, that it sounded good in its own, and then you have these massive boosts where you're boosting a massive amount of the fundamental, trying to get it to hit. Well, we have these phase relationships between tracks, and as we zoom in, this is a duplicate copy over here, so this won't be as prevalent. But as we zoom in, if this was the opposite direction of this one, then you have a simple move that you can make by, for example, flipping the phase or inverting the phase on a channel-by-channel basis. Lots of different DAWs have this, or they have it in a utility plugin. That's a really, really great start. But having the ability to adjust the phase and the relationships between everything, if you take a look at all these tracks down the line, this one over here, okay, we have delay and we have polarity. So it's adjusting for both of these. You have to determine which one that you want to be in phase with, which one with other ones over here. But once these things start getting set and you start making adjustments, you can notice that these subtle adjustments, as they add up, they're not much. They're just a little bit. They make a huge difference in terms of how your tracks sound when you play them back together. And I don't just use this for things like drums. Like, for example, here's the case of an upright bass. This is an upright bass. I've got a folder that is linked to a bus channel. I've made this bus channel mono, mainly because I'm going through an LA2A style hardware compressor, and I only have a mono instance of that. But it's the exact same thing. This one becomes the master guide. I'm using this as a send. These other two are listening to this send. I'm detecting the delay and the polarity, and it's making an adjustment in terms of what it needs to do to these tracks to get them to be perfectly phase optimized with each other in a multi-mic situation. Or in this case, you may have a line and you may also have mics. What does this allow me to do? Well, for starters, often, if I'm getting the sessions, I will have something where I hear the drum sound they're going for, and I hear what they're working with, and I say, okay. Sometimes if it's good, I'll leave it alone and I'll work from there. But a lot of the times, I will simply deactivate the plugins, and then I will put an instance of Auto Align, which is my plugin of choice for doing this type of thing. And once I, for example, phase align everything to make sure that it's in phase with my snare, the kick is in phase with the overheads, everything is in phase with each other, and everything is optimized, it's amazing that just moving the faders, because here's the thing, it's not just a change in level, but it's also a change in EQ. So sometimes I'll be working on a session, I'll get the drum sounding a certain way, and then the client will get back and we get mix approval and they want to see it, or maybe we need to make a tweak. And they're like, what did you do with the drums? How did you get the drums to sound like? They sound fantastic. They sound nice and open. I couldn't get, and I'll be like, and they're so surprised when I've like, sometimes I've just made trim adjustments and I've maybe added an EQ or a little bit of compression, but it's just a phase plugin that is optimizing the phase between those multi-mic sources. And then it's just a fader balance. And then whatever they need, sometimes they need a lot, sometimes they don't need a lot at all. And then in this case, I'm doing the same here. If we listen to these individual bass channels, right? This is a DPA microphone on an upright bass. Let's listen to it. Okay, that's a DPA. This is the ribbon mic. And then this one over here is a tube. I assume that's a preamp. There was a little bit of noise here, so I had to run an instance of RX just to get rid of the noise floor. But once these three were optimized, it was super, super simple for me to set relative balance of levels between all of these tracks that fit in context with the mix.
I'll go first.
find something that works. And I'm actually not doing too much. Like you can see for this, it's just level. In this case, I have noise reduction, but for here, there's some gain reduction. This is happening on a hardware compressor. And then after that, what am I doing? I'm doing a little bit of a boost at, apparently I needed 1.75 dB at 1903 on all three of these together. But once you've optimized the phase relationship between these sources, mixing becomes so much more easy. Why? Because you're not fighting with anything. If you have two signals that are essentially canceling each other out, you have like a positive waveform that's on the positive side, or on the top half, that's pushing the cone out. That's giving you impact. That's giving you thump. It's giving you punch. If you had the exact opposite of that, it would be trying to suck the speaker in, because the cone can go in, or the cone can be pushed out and go in. And when you have things that are fighting against each other, the speaker stays still. Nothing happens. So you start pushing drastic amounts of EQ into your source to try to get some low-end fundamental or some type of top-end punch or something, when there's phase relationships that are happening, and it changes the EQ and it changes the relationship of everything. But when you fix those and you get them to a really good starting point, it is amazing how much you can actually do with just faders. And providing that you're listening on a playback system that you either know inside and out, or something that's calibrated with your tool of choice, or that could be a set of headphones that's calibrated, or just a set of headphones that you've known for 20 years and you know them well and it translates well. Once you have a trusted playback source and you're listening, then if you're working with stuff that's multi-mic'd, drums, multiple mic guitars and things like that, you will do yourself 10 times more of a favor to do some research on finding ways and finding some third-party plugin tools that help you optimize the phase between multiple sources than you would to go buy the best new compressor, the best new EQ, the best new third-party thing or whatever. I'm literally being honest. That's truly how I feel. And if I could talk to 10 years ago Marcus, or 15 years ago Marcus, or even 6 years ago Marcus, I would say, you know, readjust your thinking, readjust your mindset, and get everything as a starting point before you even start your mix. Get everything in phase. I do that before I even start with my creative decisions. I actually take my mix and I set it up. I set up the colors. I set up the routing. I go into buses. I will just spend time optimizing the phase on multi drum mics all the time now. And I'm not even necessarily mixing. I'm just choosing what source I want to be in phase, choosing the snare, getting the overheads to work, getting the kick, making sure that everything works together and that it's optimized. And then I might do a very basic gain stage, but then I pull the faders down. And then basically what that means is that the next time that I pull up the mix and I'm actually starting the mix, the creative part of the mix, I'm just pushing faders, and that I'm working on the mix and I'm getting the relationships and the levels and I'm getting the balance to work together. But I don't have to worry that anything is working against me by having things that are canceling out. And why can't I get my low end to sound right? Oh, because these two tracks are out of phase with each other, or whatever the case is. Now, like I said, we can do certain things now without third-party plugins. We can flip the phase. We have utility tools, even if you don't have this type of thing. The other thing to take into consideration is I'm talking about things, I should have been honest, I should have been, I guess, more upfront about this. I'm specifically talking about things where you have more, let's say like more than two elements. Like I'm talking about things like multi-track drums, like real drums or something like that, for example. If you have a recording engineer who really knows what they're doing, chances are they're going to be using measurements and using tricks, and they're going to have everything done right. And it's just going to sound great when you pull everything up to zero. If somebody knows what they're doing, that's how it should sound. Sometimes I've done stuff that sounds like that. Sometimes I haven't. Sometimes I've been in such a rush and we had 5 songs to do in a day and we had 4 hours to do it, and the drummer has never heard it before. And I'm literally just throwing up anything that I know I'll get a decent signal, and I know that I'm going to have to rely on a tool like that on the back end. And that's okay, right? We have to work with what we have. But the idea about this video, it's very much not to discourage people who are brand new to recording and think that you need to go out and buy all these plugins to get good results. I also need to be clear and say I own lots of plugins and I love third-party plugins and I love them for very specific reasons. And that's okay as well. We have to support the company. We have to support the ecosystem that we're part of. And because it keeps everything moving, it keeps everybody making great music, people getting paid, it keeps our industry alive. But I'm trying really hard to get people to understand that you need to get to the basics and you need to fix issues before you start working on things. And if I was starting off brand new, knowing everything I know right now, and all of a sudden, poof, all of my software licenses were gone, everything I ever owned was gone, I got a brand new copy of Studio One and a new laptop, and I owned nothing. The first two things that I would do is in terms of like mixing stuff, I would buy a room correction software that I could trust for, my speakers and my headphones. And I would buy, if I was working on stuff where I was mixing like lots of live drums and stuff, I would buy a plugin that allowed me to optimize the phase. The one I use is called AutoAlign. It's by SoundRadix. I'm not sponsored by SoundRadix. This video isn't, they don't know that I'm even talking about this. There are other plugins from other companies, and you can look at any plugin that you want, but that would be what I would do in terms of getting the best results. That would be what I would do now if I could do it over. Anyways, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you next one. Cheers.